welcome to another episode of Connecting the Dots, the series and podcast that brings you all the information that you love to know about these top of mind subjects. We bring great speakers, and of course, not only great speakers and conversationalists, but we invite in leaders from across the country to weigh in on these conversations. And you know what? If you're a community maker, leader, all of that, we invite you to listen into, because there's definitely going to be things that you want to know and how you can actually put those in place. And if you can't put them in place, then I got the expert here that can help you out. So to get us started, I have none other than my friend and amazing leader, Mr. Donnell Layne. He is worldwide known, and I say worldwide known because we're going to speak into existence. He is definitely nationally known. And I know I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, but I love to do a quick icebreaker too. So that icebreaker, if you had unlimited resources for a day, what innovation would you bring to life?
Wow, that's a way to start it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you are, quick. I'm like, yeah, he's all about innovation. So I know he has something top of mind.
That's right. So unlimited resources, probably the first thing I'm going to work on is restoring Lake Chad in Africa, because of how many humans are dependent on that water source and how it's been evaporating, right? Being used, water is used for various objects. So the new technology where we're actually able to extract, water from the atmosphere, humidity, right? We can actually, so I've already imagined a project where I'm setting up these devices along the coastlines of Lake Chad, basically just refilling it over time, right? Understanding, study the ecology, understand water and the different concentrations of nutrients that are needed, right? And so that would be the primary project. We would then take that water that we're replacing and then create a vertical farming infrastructure also in that area to continue to feed that region.
Well, as I told the guest, there you go. I knew that he had something top of mind. He's ready to implement next week, maybe even tomorrow. He's always had something in mind. So if you don't mind, give us the 30-second version of just who you are and kind of the work that you've been doing. And then we're going to move into the conversation.
Thank you. 30 seconds who I am. Originally from New York, born in Harlem, product out of Harlem Hospital. I want to say I was a curious kid, loved learning, come from a family of educators. Shout out to my grandma. She, president of PTA, owned her own seamstress shop in downtown Manhattan, and basically instilled in us the tenets of education. And so I was able to obtain a few degrees, Cornell University, Northwestern University, in order to impact our community. I wanted to utilize that knowledge that I was gathering in these areas and bring them directly back to the people who need the assistance.
So tell our listeners, just so that they'll be grounded on that too. So the areas that you studied, so your degrees are in
Africana Studies. So first things first was understanding the history of the African diaspora across the globe. And then Northwestern was engineering, so information technology, focusing on photonics. So I love the study of light, nanotechnology, quantum mechanics. Those are my bedtime stories, right? Like that's the thing that gets me up in the morning.
For most of us, we are like, okay, my brain is stretching on that, but you have found a way to not only follow your passion, but also make this an area of passion for others. And I think it's a great segue for the work that you're doing. So you designed the iMAKE Innovation Center, as one of the nation's models for makerspaces. Can you share what inspired, the creation and the key impact that it's having on STEM learning?
The short of it is, I believe that the power of the innovation of the iMAKE Innovation Center is the actual space, right? The space that allows for freedom of self-expression. So it was a space designed for a multitude of learners, right? So if you're interested in various areas, so one could be biology. So we have a biology area. If another thing is, maybe you're an art student, right? But you have this like interest and you think that you might be into STEM, but not sure. So we have a textiles area where you can go over and use a direct to garment printer. You can use a vinyl printer. We have an embroidery machine, right? And that moves us into advanced manufacturing, right? So that we have 3D printers, right? So that's additive manufacturing. Then you got to take on subtractive manufacturing. So we have have a woodworking area, right, with the CNC mills. And then to bring it all together, that's all around the classroom, a multimodal classroom that we convert into different things. So we built a racing rig internal, right? The team built it, soup to nuts, right? No pre-configured, no kits, right? We had them research every single part, put together every single part. And we have a racing rig, a flying rig. It's a gaming center. We utilize augmented reality, virtual reality. So all of this comes together through the lens of you. Right? It's your passion. It's your life, right? It's your life minutes, right? It doesn't belong to everyone. We're all our own universe, right? So it's honoring that, giving folks the space and then also the support. So I don't know something, but you know it, now I know it, right? And vice versa. And so that we try to support one another. Have you ever seen the movie 300?
No, I haven't. Tell us about it.
Talk about the Spartans, right? So the Spartans had this phalanx methodology to how their army, basically, and you had to protect your fellow soldier thigh to neck with your shield on one side, and you had a spear on the other. And so the strength of their phalanx was each other. Their strength was their brother. So we brought that into the makerspace, right? Like that was the concept. If anyone is struggling with anything, the entire community comes together to support that person.
I love that sense of wholeness. And I also love how you've been able to capture interest and make that a focal point of how people learn. So when you think about, the role that innovation plays in workforce development, especially in industries, that need skilled workers and labor, is this what we're doing with innovation going to be a new approach in training?
So I would hope so. So I can tell you from the various success stories that we've had. One student in particular, neurodivergent, started off in the tutoring center. She is now managing a shop that is looking to be purchased by a Fortune 500 company. The owner,
oh, wow.
Yes, the owner called me and asked me, "Do you have anyone with any makerspace skills?" And I said, I'm thinking of one person, right? When I call her, she's managing a multitude of makerspaces, where she left the University UC Riverside managing their makerspace, right? And so when we start to look at the sheer power of giving someone a safe space to cultivate themselves, find their passion, identify what they're interested in, and to move forward with the support of the community, it's the entire world of possibility opens up.
Yeah, opportunities are just limitless. Wow. So how can makerspaces and education foster, the hands-on learning and empower students to be creators, not just consumers? Because we got that part. There's a lot of debt out there, so we got the part about consuming. What about the creator part? How can makerspaces inspire that?
It's not easy to create, right? It's not easy to be a creator. Although that is, in today's time, today's economy, the thing that most of the youth want to be. They want to be a creator. So there's things to learn, though, about creating, right? There's design elements that you need to learn about. What's your logo? What's your brand, right? We need to bring in entrepreneurial skill sets into this. So when we talk about, how would a makerspace promote, right? The skills that are needed to be a creator in today's environment, we're talking about a space that's able to reconfigure itself based on the personality of the individual, right? That needs specific, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's like a prescribed, right? Like medicine, if you would. Let's just say medicine, right? And so the makerspace allows for the flexibility to reconfigure itself that then becomes the best medicine for that person.
I love it. Tailored to meet their needs.
Yes.
I love that. So, I guess communication is also critical with anything that we're doing. And so the communication strategies, what have you found probably the most effective for engaging different stakeholders, from education to community leaders, about the innovation process? So
the students have been a mystery in terms of communicating with them. And the question, with all the adults, why, what's happening, where, right? Finding their communication channels. So YouTube, right? At least we thought YouTube. Instagram, at least we thought Instagram, right? And then that converges to TikTok, that converges to Discord channels, that converges to, right, areas that we're typically not in. nowadays. So, when we talk about what can AI do, when we talk about how can we use like AI agents to help us communicate more effectively with this population, that's where you can actually utilize AI bots in these chat rooms, these Discord server-based environments. We talk about the Twitch channel, right? And so in the makerspace here, we've created our own YouTube channel, and we've absolutely made it imperative to create and promote what we're doing through the use of like small bite-sized clips, right? 1-minute clips on and communicating. So how do you get to the adults?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what about those other stakeholders, in the community?
That goes back to our standards, right? So our flyers, like getting out to the community, we have a mobile innovation center. So we actually have a bus, right? And so for that bus, we use the website to book the bus, right? We try to promote the information that you need in order to make that decision on if you want the bus, newsletters. It's all the standard stuff, right? But the real question is, how do you get to your stakeholders that now communicate in these smaller groups, these smaller group chats? And so it's actually going to other organizations and being a part of their meetings, right? Going to the Chamber of Commerce and being a part of their meetings, right? So you have to show up. That's the short of it.
I love that, and I can appreciate, because I know a lot of the work that you've done over your career is how to make sure that marginalized populations who may or may not, our BIPOC communities and others who may not be privy to, some of these resources that really could be a game changer when I think about innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do, again, thinking about makerspaces, creating access to STEM opportunities for non-traditional, learners or underrepresented communities, what have you done? Again, I know, but I want all of our listeners to know, because this really could be a game changer for communities and how they look to transition and distribute wealth and create opportunity.
I see it as the way. I honestly, for me, I basically name it the garage. It's the same concept of the 60s and the 70s when we had these young children that were interested in technology. But where did they go? They went to their garage, right? When we talk about Steve Jobs, when we talk about Wozniak, when we talk about, you name it, Bill Gates, right? When you read the stories, they were in their garage building things, right? Some of the underrepresented individuals in the world don't have those spaces with those tools. This provides that space with those tools, and then the individuals that have the skill sets that can teach it. So what's going to take this to the next level, I also believe, is AI, right? Why? Because of instruction. It's the one thing that won't get tired. 24/7, and you can manage if there's any bias, right? Let's not act like, it's going to be, out of the box, zero bias, right? You might have to massage it a little bit, but that tool is going to allow us now, if a person needs to 3D print and maybe the person that's the expert in the 3D printing is out of the office, okay, let's pull up the AI, right? And let's allow the AI to teach the world, because it's just not going to get tired. It's not going to get stressed out. And then when we talk about cost, right? It allows us to reduce costs or move limited funds, limited resources into other areas so that we can strengthen other areas of the makerspace.
I love that, because it sounds like what you're implying is that literally the innovation centers can be the garages that are open and create that access point for these different communities, so that if you don't have that garage, like Steve Jobs and others, then you have a garage and it has all the supports that you need.
Exactly.
Oh, I love it.
We have table saws, right? We have these large, pieces of machinery that the average citizen doesn't have. So it's not I'm not promoting that, this is just the average garage. I'm just want to clarify for the audience that, I have a garage, but you might not have a laser cutter in your garage, right? And so this is the differentiation of a makerspace, right?
So you got the Cadillac version of the garage, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
I love it, and I love also that it allows individuals of different levels of where they are with economics to be able to take advantage of that and not have to worry about costs, because it's being made available. So what's the biggest challenge you've encountered in scaling innovation? Because that's usually, I mean, I don't care whether I'm talking education, government, or whoever, it's about, scaling innovation. And how can organizations overcome it?
Understanding is the first part. When we're dealing with innovation, if you have an idea and it's far out there, based on distance, right? Typically, things that are far out there look about this big. And so you have to be able to take that idea, that innovation, and explain it in a way that allows the folks that you are asking possibly for their resources, right? To explain in a way on what's the benefit, what's this impact, right? So being able to measure, right? Having metrics, being able to say that, look, we on average bring, 500 students through this space every day. Here's how many students interact with this area. Here's how many students interact with this area. Here are the projects that we've completed. Here are the artifacts from the projects that we completed. Here are the results of the internships that these students are now in. Here, here are the degrees now obtained, right? Like, I think that is what's absolutely needed in order to scale an innovation, because how are you going to how are you going to justify the amount of dollars that you need? And so, we're dealing with these large corporations, and I think those partnerships are extremely important, right? Partnerships with places like Amazon. We understand the work that they're doing with AI and the supply chain, right? And those innovations, right? One of the most innovative companies on the planet, right? With places like Apple, Google. They have resources that would enable a makerspace, right? Like, in the competitions, being part of the competition so that makerspaces can actually, just win the competition. Like, no, it's a world that if we connect it properly, I really do see it as the way forward, especially for the creatives. And like, if you want to make a YouTube video, go to the makerspace and.
So you're really looking at it, and I think it's wise that our listeners pay attention to this, that, how you leverage not only partners and other resources, that scaling is not, a one man and or woman show, that it's a collaborative. But even if you go that route, that you have to be able to communicate what the measurements are so everybody understands what's the return on investment, and how you're going to measure the impact. I love that. I love that. And that's such a great, and it's a realistic way, because oftentimes you're like, oh, well, just go and scale it. You can scale it, but scaling is expensive, and which means that you got to get buy-in. So I love your response to that. What advice, because we're going to tap into your expertise, what advice would you give to schools or organizations looking to implement STEM initiatives and makerspaces in their own communities? And as I've told them, the whole idea about the Connecting the Dots series is that if you don't have an expert, then I'm bringing the experts to you. So what would be that advice that you would give?
To utilize the youth. I want to say that the makerspace, the beauty, the genius in the makerspace that was created, iMAKE Innovation Center, is directly correlated to the geniuses that work there, to the geniuses that we serve, right? And that's that's my message. Do not underestimate, the treasure that you're sitting on, that you have access to, right? Some of the folks that are showing up a little differently in your space, that might not think the same way as you do, that might, like, look at them, give them a second glance, right? Peel back that cover and see if those individuals might be a great fit for an opportunity like this, like STEM innovation, right? Because if so many different types of people fit in it, it gives a space for that type of emergence of genius. But you got to be willing to take the risk on someone you might not feel comfortable with because they think differently from you or look differently from you.
I love that, where you are placing high dollar value on welcoming differences, different perspectives, different, life experiences, just different people, and meeting them where they are so that they can not only be the best version of themselves, but contribute to making it great, whatever that iSpace is. I love that. And I want to make sure that the listeners know this too. I know that you have a playbook of sorts. So if they want to reach out to you and figure out how to do that at their institution, and I know that you also do some consulting services as well. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure, because there are, and there have been in the past, funding opportunities that allow for innovation centers to be created. And for those that, again, like, hey, I know a resource, but I just don't know how to put it pen to paper or, keyboard to monitor, then certainly you are best positioned to help us in that regard. So thank you for that. And then a question about, how can we encourage more collaboration between educational institutions and businesses, to prepare students for future careers in STEM? How are you doing that? What are some examples?
The political scene being like, administration, right? It's more of like, you have to show up, you have to say certain things, you have to speak a certain way. So I would say you want to first partner with folks that enjoy that. Right? So you have to make sure you enjoy it. Otherwise, it's going to come out, right? And so find that person that likes that, and then engage with these larger scale or larger organizations like an Amazon, asking them, what are the skill sets that you need to move this business forward in this area, right? It might be different. It's different in California than it is in Texas, than it is in Louisiana and Florida, right? And so interfacing with the organization, asking them skill specific questions, and then identifying, well, do I have this capability in my space here, or will I need to augment that in a way with another staff member, maybe AI, possibly, right? And that's just the start of the conversation, and then you have to continue, right? I thought of 3 different organizations. One had to do with water filtration because of our aquatic ecosystems inside of the makerspace. Robotics, of course, additive manufacturing, right? That supply chain. And then there's just so many different ways it can tie in. Understanding you need to find out your region's workforce metrics, right? Like, who's your most vulnerable populations? What are the skill sets for your highest paying jobs in your area? Right now, we're dealing with, folks retiring. Who's retiring? Do they have replacements in the pipeline? Right? That's gonna be what highlights, like, oh, there's an opportunity here for us to create water filtration specialists, right? And then we can take them over to the water district and get them an internship, right? Like that's just a possibility, although it's real. It's a real thing when you look through the data, when you look through the workforce development data, when you interface with these organizations, when you find that person that likes to have those political conversations. That's why I say you'll get the most bang for your buck, and understanding what are the areas I need to focus on in my region, in my area that will best impact my population.
I think one thing, and I know that you probably already do this, but I know that in my own professional background, a lot of the opportunities, because, industry is hard at it, making, not only the bottom line, but they're just hard at it just to, continue to be able to compete. One of the things that I found helpful is that bringing ideas to them where, yes, you want to know about what their needs are, but if you have a model, a plan, or something that's already worked that you can share with them. I mean, I've found that that's been very helpful for them because they understand that you are coming with ideas of how to get it done. So have you found that same thing with innovation? Because here's the deal. It's not, I love what happens in a maker space, but then there's also this entrepreneurial mindset that you have to have as well. So I know a lot of companies are now saying, how can I make sure my existing workforce is entrepreneurially minded? What are you doing in that space? Have you all involved yourself in that way?
So when we talk about prototyping, this is the bread and butter of a makerspace, right? Like this is where you now have the materials that you need. You now have the environment, the support of other individuals being able to work with you on a particular prototype. Now you're talking about interfacing now with the higher ed, right, business department. Now you're talking about interfacing with the organization and intellectual property. So I would implore everyone to go look at the intellectual property policies that are in place, if they are in place. That's one of the things that for makerspaces you'll need to have in place, right? If someone's going to come in and leverage your resources, this is where we get into the conversation around sustainability. So if you have products leaving your space from an entrepreneurial standpoint, you now have. You can incubate businesses, small businesses. You can have a student that then starts their business inside of your makerspace, create a product out of your makerspace, bring organizations to that student. So once again, the phalanx, right? You're able to create this forward progress and forward momentum that cannot be stopped.
I love that. I love that. And we've made our way to the rapid question round that our audience gets to know more about you. So, what's one tool or resource every makerspace should have?
AI chatbot.
Oh, I love it. If you could change one thing about the way we approach STEM education, what would it be?
Creating more safe spaces for freedom of self-expression.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And last, who's your favorite innovator or thought leader?
Carl Sagan. He was the original narrator of the Cosmos. He was also the mentor to, who's that astrophysicist? That's Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
Also a professor at Cornell. So, it was one of those things where, he's a hero to me. And so, read all his books. I have quantum mechanics tattooed on the Strategist equation, right? Like, so his viewpoint, right? He was, when you talk about communication, he was the person that was able to take these super complex ideas and then like condense them down into these bite-sized, editable chunks that you could actually absorb and learn from. And so that was the power that I saw in him, right? Like he was able to democratize science. Yeah.
I love that. And I know that our listeners, they're going to want to, one, not only like and share, but definitely subscribe so that you never miss an episode of Connecting the Dots. Again, a great conversation with Mr. Donnell Layne. He has so much wisdom. I'm telling you, doesn't matter whether it's the West Coast or East Coast, he can definitely fill in those gaps. And we want to remind you to make sure that you're listening in for the next session. So don't ever miss a spot. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.